Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're cutting through the noise and diving deep into a truly fascinating stack of sources. Our topic, the accelerating march of automation and its profound impact on our economy and society. We're moving beyond the sci-fi tropes to unpack the real-world implications of, well, the rise of the robots.
It really is remarkable, isn't it, how quickly the future we once imagined is becoming our present. We'll explore how these current technological shifts are fundamentally different from past industrial revolutions. They're challenging long-held assumptions about jobs, wages, and even the very mechanics of our economy.
Yeah, our mission today is to uncover the surprising facts and help you understand what this rapid automation means for you, for all of us, and the world around us. So let's get started.
Okay, let's begin maybe with a look back. Our sources recall the post-World War II Golden Age, a time of rapid technological progress that seemed to exist in, well, perfect symbiosis with the American workforce. Productivity increased, wages rose right alongside it, and this fueled consumer demand. It created what felt like a virtuous cycle.
But if that was the case, why are so many people concerned about automation now? What's actually changed?
That really is the crux of it. The economic reality has shifted pretty dramatically since the mid-1970s. That perfect symbiosis you mentioned, where productivity and compensation grew in lockstep, it's simply broken down.
Right.
Our sources highlight a really clear divergence. The fruits of innovation, they're now accruing almost entirely to business owners and investors, not so much to workers. This challenges what was once an accepted economic principle called Bowley's Law.
Bowley's Law.
Yeah, it basically said that the fraction of national income going to labor and capital stayed relatively constant. But today, labor's share, even with skyrocketing salaries for top executives, has been in steep decline, especially since the turn of the century.
Wow.
And we're also seeing a concerning trend in labor force participation. It's been falling since 2000, even for prime working-age adults. This has contributed to a new norm of jobless recoveries after recessions. Jobs are slow to return, and the ones that do are often lower quality.
And the speed at which this is unfolding is truly astonishing. Think about the integrated circuit, invented back in 1958. Our sources give us this fantastic analogy. Imagine doubling your car's speed 27 times. You'd be traveling 671 million miles per hour.
Incredible.
That's roughly the progress in computing power since then. The author, who's worked in software development for over 25 years, notes how dramatically technology has reduced the need for employees for routine tasks, even in small businesses.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to underestimate this acceleration. For instance, the author's 2009 book predicted self-driving cars would arrive, over time. Google introduced a fully automated car within a year of that book's publication.
Right, the timeline just keeps shrinking.
Exactly. Or think about IBM's Deep Blue beating Garry Kasparov in chess back in '97. Impressive, sure. But then just a few years later, Watson won Jeopardy.
And that's a whole different ballgame.
A far more complex challenge, yeah.
Okay.
Requiring it to parse language, jokes, even puns.
That leap to Watson, it illustrates a critical point. Its ability to sort of know what it knows and derive precise answers from just staggering amounts of unstructured information. Things like medical textbooks, patient notes.
So not just structured data, but text, language.
Exactly. And this has very real-world applications today in major medical facilities, assisting with diagnosis, treatment plans. It's happening now. This capability, combined with the rise of cloud computing, it centralizes IT functions, leading to significant job consolidation.
Right, the cloud effect.
We see examples like Apple's billion-dollar data center creating only, 50 jobs?
Yeah.
Or a CEO stating his 180 employees do work that used to require 30,000 people.
30,000.
It truly brings home that phrase, software is eating the world.
So unlike past ways of automation, which were often specialized, right? They impacted maybe one industry, allowing workers to transition somewhere else. This current wave of information technology, it's different. It's a general purpose technology, isn't it?
Precisely. Its impact is cross-cutting. It influences virtually every existing industry, making them less labor-intensive. And this transition could happen really rapidly. Moreover, new industries like Google and Facebook, they incorporate labor-saving tech right from the get-go.
Baked in from the start.
Yeah, achieving massive valuations with tiny numbers of employees compared to their scale and influence. This often leads to what our sources call these winner-take-all scenarios, where a few dominant players capture most of the value.
Okay, let's look at some tangible examples of this automation in action. Maybe starting with what we traditionally think of as blue-collar jobs. Manufacturing. We have companies like Industrial Perception, which designed a box-moving robot. Get this. It can move a box every second compared to a human's 6 seconds.
Wow.
And it never tires, never files claims. And then there's Rodney Brooks's Rethink Robotics with Baxter, this humanoid robot for repetitive tasks. It costs significantly less than a year's wage for a typical U.S. worker.
Less than a year's wage.
And the open source robot operating system, or ROS, that's making it much easier to program and control robots, which is speeding up their adoption worldwide. This isn't just a Western thing either. China, for instance, saw 16 million manufacturing jobs disappear between 1995 and 2002. 16 million.
And that reach extends beyond the factories, doesn't it? Deeply into the service sector. We're already used to ATMs and self-service checkouts, obviously, but the next decade could put millions of low-wage jobs at risk. Consider Momentum Machines' burger robot.
The burger bot.
Yeah. It's estimated a restaurant spends around $135,000 per year on wages for employees making burgers. This robot can pay for itself in less than a year.
That's fast.
It is. And a striking point from our sources is that the average fast food worker now, they're 35 years old. Many rely on these jobs as their primary income, often needing public assistance. So this isn't just about efficiency, it's about shifting the very structure of our workforce.
And then there's retail. Deeply affected by online players like Amazon. Their Kiva robots, for example, cut fulfillment costs by 40%. 40! Kroger's automated distribution centers, they eliminate human intervention entirely, except for the initial loading and final unloading.
It's end-to-end automation almost.
Almost. And the sources offer this really telling example with Redbox. David Dunning's team of just 7 people manages 189 Redbox kiosks in Chicago. 7 people.
Wow.
Compare that to Blockbuster, which once needed dozens of stores and hundreds of employees for just a fraction of that reach. The ratio of employees to service provided has just shifted dramatically.
And while a box-moving robot is impressive, the final frontier, as they call it, of routine manual jobs involves bigger challenges. Things like cloud robotics, advanced visual perception, spatial computation, dexterity. Imagine a robotic maid needing to recognize an almost unlimited number of objects in a cluttered room and decide what to do.
Yeah, that's a huge leap.
It is a huge leap in complexity, but it's actively being pursued. People are working on that right now.
But okay, automation isn't just confined to physical tasks. White-collar jobs are increasingly at risk too. Automated writing, for example. It's already here. Narrative Science's Krill program generates news stories every 30 seconds for top media outlets like Forbes. And many don't even acknowledge its use.
They don't disclose it.
Often not. A co-founder predicted that over 90% of news articles would be algorithmically written within 15 years. Over 90%.
That's staggering. And this capability is largely driven by the explosion of unstructured data, right? Email, social media posts, sensor readings, all that stuff. And advancements in machine learning. Machine learning allows computers to effectively write their own program. We see it in spam filters, Amazon and Netflix recommendations.
The recommendations, yeah.
Deep learning breakthroughs are particularly striking. Systems now outperform humans in traffic sign recognition 99% accuracy. And Facebook's facial recognition, it approaches human accuracy. We're talking 97.25% versus 97.53%. It's getting incredibly close.
So what do these advancements mean for, knowledge-based work? Companies are using people analytics, tracking keystrokes, emails, web searches, not just for performance evaluation, but as training data for future automation.
Training the system that might replace them.
Exactly. Google even has a patent for personalized email and social media responses. And there's this company called WorkFusion that uses freelancers to generate training data for their own eventual replacement by full automation.
That is kind of ironic, isn't it?
Deeply ironic.
It's truly fascinating, though, to trace IBM Watson's journey. From defeating Garry Kasparov in chess, a game with rigid rules, to winning Jeopardy! Which, as you said, is far more complex. Natural language, puns, jokes.
Understanding context.
Yes. Watson's ability to know what it knows and derive precise answers from staggering amounts of unstructured medical information textbook notes, it's revolutionary. It's now being used in major medical centers like MD Anderson for diagnosis and treatment plans. And this capability also stands poised to eliminate vast numbers of offshore call center jobs.
Right, jobs that rely on human understanding of language.
Exactly.
And the cloud effect, as you mentioned, multiplies this consolidation. Cloud computing centralizes IT functions. Apple's billion-dollar data center, only 50 jobs created. The CEO of Good Data noted his 180 employees do work that used to require 30,000 people. It just underscores that software is eating the world. But it's not just about efficiency, right? Our sources reveal machines are even getting creative.
It forces us to really consider the nature of creativity itself. Take Eureka, this Cornell University system. It discovered natural laws like Newton's second law without prior programming. The researchers said it asks questions. That's curiosity.
Curiosity in a
Dang,
machine.
yeah. And genetic programming allows algorithms to design themselves. One researcher, John Koza, noted they've produced patentable inventions. IAMIS, a cluster of computers, composed music performed by the London Symphony Orchestra. And there's this program called the Painting Fool that strives to be taken seriously as a painter.
So not replacing human artists necessarily, but
Yeah. Not yet, maybe. But these techniques can be repurposed in countless ways. Legal strategy, management problems. It erodes demand for certain types of specialized white-collar labor.
And nowhere is this rapid advance more evident, perhaps, than in financial services. Wall Street is now dominated by automated trading algorithms. They account for, what, 50 to 70% of transactions?
Not much.
Firms invest billions for milliseconds of speed advantage. Think a $200 million fiber optic cable just for a 3 to 4 thousandths of a second gain.
Tiny fractions of a second matter that much.
They do. And the impact is clear. Wall Street saw massive layoffs despite soaring profits and transaction volume.
It's also important to acknowledge what our sources call virtual immigration. Jobs once offshored electronically to places like India and the Philippines. They're now the next logical step for full automation. As we discussed, systems like Watson are poised to eliminate huge numbers of those offshore call center jobs.
So the offshoring was just a stepping stone, maybe.
In some ways, yes. And the sheer scale of global competition for white-collar jobs is intense. Not just on wages, but also on cognitive capability. The combined top 5% cognitive ability of India and China alone accounts for over 130 million people. That's a huge talent pool, competing globally.
Some argue for a human-machine symbiosis. Right?
Yeah.
Pointing to freestyle chess, where human-computer teams beat single computers.
That example comes up a lot.
But this is particularly insightful from the sources. Businesses are unlikely to pay a premium for world-class performance for routine work. The elite workers who truly benefit from this synergy, they're a very small population.
That makes sense. Most tasks aren't grandmaster chess.
Exactly. And in the legal profession, e-discovery software, analyzing millions of documents, is replacing lawyers and paralegals. Many law school graduates now find themselves in low-wage document review jobs, just categorizing 80 documents per hour by clicking relevant or not relevant.
That's not what they probably envisioned in law school. And this brings us to a significant challenge for education itself. The belief that an engineering or computer science degree guarantees a job. According to our sources, that's actually a myth now. Supply currently exceeds demand by 50%.
50%.
Yeah. And consider the Robocon project in Japan, aiming for an AI to pass Tokyo University's tough entrance exam. Researchers worry that even 10 to 20% of skilled workers being replaced by automation would be a catastrophe. 50%. Way beyond a catastrophe.
Yeah.
And they say such numbers can't be ruled out.
That's a really stark outlook for higher education, which is also grappling with its own transformations. Our sources tell us there's a petition, Professionals Against Machine Scoring, protesting the use of algorithms to grade essays on standardized tests.
Okay.
Yet, here's a surprising angle. These algorithms, trained by human-graded essays, can score new ones instantly. And a 2012 study actually found them more reliable than human instructors.
More reliable.
Then there's the whole MOOC phenomenon, massive open online courses. Stanford's AI class with Sebastian Thrun and Peter Norvig, Google Leads. It saw 160,000 students sign up from over 190 countries.
Huge numbers.
The initial hype envisioned elite education accessible to all at little or no cost. The potential to unlock a billion more brains.
Right. The promise was enormous. But the reality check has certainly set in. Udacity, for instance, is shifting its focus more towards vocational training with companies like Google and Salesforce underwriting courses, getting people job-ready skills.
Practical skill.
Exactly. And Georgia Tech now offers a MOOC-based master's in computer science for just $6,600. That's 80% less than a traditional degree.
80% less. And this comes as higher education faces a real financial crisis. Our sources show that between 2000 and 2010, the cost of actual instruction rose only 10%, but student services soared 19%, administration 15%, operations 20%.
The non-teaching costs ballooned.
Right. Many campuses now have more administrators than instructors. They rely heavily on adjunct faculty, often paid as little as $2,500 per course. No benefits. And we're also seeing luxurious student housing and even lazy river amenities being built, all adding to these exorbitant costs.
It's a strange set of priorities sometimes, and it truly raises the question. Harvard Business School professor Clayton Christensen predicts half of U.S. universities may be in bankruptcy in 15 years.
Half.
Half. Even if not outright bankruptcy, MOOCs could severely undermine the cash cow introductory courses at lower-ranked schools, the ones that bring in significant revenue.
So what does this all mean for job prospects? It seems like even as algorithms help teach, other algorithms are automating the routine writing and other entry-level tasks that new graduates are likely to seek. It creates a really difficult landscape for those entering the workforce. Okay, this brings us to the broader societal and economic implications. There's this often-told story about Walter Reuther, the head of the UAW, touring an automated car plant with Henry Ford II. Ford reportedly quipped, "Walter, how are you going to get these robots to pay union dues?" And Reuther shot back, "Henry, how are you going to get them to buy your cars?"
Yeah. That exchange really gets to the core problem, doesn't it? The surprising insight here isn't just that machines replace jobs, it's that unprecedented productivity, paradoxically, threatens the very foundation of consumer demand if we fail to rethink wealth distribution.
Because machines don't buy things.
Exactly. Machines don't consume. Consumer spending makes up 2/3 of U.S. GDP. And jobs are the primary way purchasing power gets distributed. If automation eliminates a substantial fraction of jobs or drives down wages, consumer demand suffers. That directly threatens economic growth. The paradox is, businesses might become incredibly productive, but if no one can afford their products, the entire economic system breaks down.
And we're already seeing some effects on inequality and consumer spending, right? Our sources show the rise of what they call a plutonomy. In 1992, the top 5% of U.S. households accounted for 27% of consumer spending. By 2012, it was 38%.
38%.
Meanwhile, the bottom 80% share fell from 47% to 39%.
What's remarkable there is that the wealthy, they spend a smaller fraction of their income overall. After the Great Recession, the recovery in consumer spending, it was driven entirely by the top 5%. They increased their spending by 17%. The bottom 95% saw no recovery. Their consumption stayed mired at 2008 levels.
So that top 5% can't carry the whole economy.
Exactly. Considering the wider implications that concentrated spending power cannot alone sustain a mass market economy.
This has sparked a major economic debate, hasn't it? Nobel laureates like Joseph Stiglitz and Robert Solow argue that this inequality directly undermines economic growth because the middle class is just too weak to support consumer spending.
But others disagree. Paul Krugman, many conservative economists, they attribute problems to other factors, things like uncertainty about public debt, taxes, regulation. Krugman has called the conservative belief in stimulating the economy through confidence a belief in the confidence fairy.
The confidence sphere.
So the question becomes, what are the limitations of our economic models? They're based on past data, they notably missed the 2008 financial crisis, and they often use simplistic assumptions about how consumers and workers behave. As Keynes once said, too large a proportion of recent mathematical economics are merely concoctions, which allow the author to lose sight of the complexities of the real world.
And when it comes to productivity versus demand, our sources make this clear. Productivity measures actual output, not potential. In the service sector, output responds immediately to demand. During the Great Recession, for example, productivity actually increased, not because output was booming,
but because businesses cut jobs aggressively.
Exactly. They slashed workforces, increasing the burden on the remaining workers.
Stepping back, this really suggests a potential perfect storm scenario, where technological unemployment and environmental impact unfold roughly in parallel, reinforcing and amplifying each other. Now, techno-optimists believe technology will solve all environmental problems, maybe pointing to solar power's Moore's law-like trend.
Tech will save us.
Right. But a more realistic view suggests we need innovation combined with regulation. And if automation creates widespread economic insecurity, addressing critical issues like climate change, that becomes even more politically difficult.
Yeah, much harder to ask people to sacrifice if they're already struggling.
Yeah.
Okay, let's explore some more speculative but potentially deeply impactful future scenarios. Our sources propose this alien invasion thought experiment. What if machines could do nearly everything?
Okay.
In this scenario, income from capital would concentrate in a tiny elite, creating a kind of techno-feudalism where the majority of humanity becomes superfluous. Unlike medieval serfs who were essential, in this future, the majority might simply be unneeded.
That's a chilling thought, techno-feudalism.
It is. And this leads us to the concept of the singularity, the highly speculative idea of superhuman machine intelligence leading to rapid, unforeseen technological progress. Ray Kurzweil predicts human-level AI by 2045,
Mhm.
maybe even longevity escape velocity,
Yeah.
effective immortality.
Right, singularity. This begs the question, though. Many top researchers, Chomsky, Pinker, even Gordon Moore himself, they're skeptical. They call it science fiction.
Understandably.
But even a low probability of it occurring, as Stephen Hawking warned, demands serious consideration because the implications are just so dramatic. If it occurs, human-level AI would make humans uncompetitive in nearly all jobs, massively amplifying these existing trends of income concentration.
And if that wasn't enough to think about, consider advanced nanotechnology. K. Eric Drexler's vision of molecular machines arranging atoms to instantly create almost anything. Imagine a car being assembled in minutes in a garage-sized factory.
Molecular assembly.
Yeah. Though government funding for this specific vision shifted away, partly due to gray goo fears.
The self-replicating nanobots consuming everything.
Right, that fear. But its potential impact, if realized in some form, is still profound. Okay, this deep dive has clearly shown that automation seems different this time around. And given the accelerating pace, the conventional wisdom of just more education and training is the universal solution, the solution President Kennedy suggested back in 1963, he might just be insufficient now.
This is a particularly compelling point from the sources. Sociologist Stephen Brint argues that colleges actually produce students relatively well matched to routine jobs. Jobs where, quote, showing up and doing the work is more important than achieving outstanding levels of performance.
Okay.
And those are precisely the jobs most vulnerable to automation. Our sources describe this job skills pyramid being eaten from the bottom up by automation, and the top is contracting. It's simply unrealistic, they argue, to think everyone can be crammed into that shrinking top tier.
And this leads to an interesting counterargument from Nicholas Carr. He suggests technology-centered automation can actually erode human skills. He uses the example of aviation, where increased cockpit automation means pilots get less actual flying practice.
De-skilling.
Yeah. And while public safety fields might have safeguards, are there really relatively few barriers to full automation in, say, fast food or office jobs?
Exactly. In many of those sectors, the market incentives just drive towards full automation, especially when the consequences of a technical failure are, let's say, less spectacular than an aviation disaster. The economic incentive to replace human labor with a cheaper, more consistent machine is just very, very high. So if education isn't a sole solution and halting automation seems unrealistic, then new policies are desperately needed.
And this is where the idea of a basic income guarantee, or BIG, comes into the conversation. Now, this idea is often immediately labeled socialism, but its historical roots are quite different. Friedrich Hayek, an icon among conservatives, was actually a strong proponent.
That surprises many people. Hayek's view wasn't about equal outcomes. It was more about insurance against adversity and ensuring efficient social and economic function. He believed a wealthy society can afford to provide for all. And thinking back to that Rutherford exchange, if capital completely replaces labor, and without a mechanism like BIG, who will consume?
Right, who buys the cars?
Exactly. The idea of infinite income for capital holders without widespread purchasing power simply makes no sense. That techno-feudalism scenario powerfully highlights this. A guaranteed income directly replenishes purchasing power for consumers. It essentially puts fish back into the economic lake when automation takes them out.
And interestingly, our sources also discuss the Peltzman effect, which suggests that a safety net actually encourages economic risk-taking.
How so?
Well, a guaranteed income would act as an economic cushion. It could allow entrepreneurs to start new businesses without risking utter destitution, or let people take less secure but potentially more rewarding jobs.
That's an interesting angle. Providing a floor encourages reaching higher. However, we can't ignore the clear challenges. Political acceptance is a major hurdle. You hear fears of slacker communes or a loss of the work ethic.
Yeah, the political messaging is tough.
And of course, funding is the big question. Though our sources suggest options. Things like a carbon tax or a value-added tax could potentially provide the necessary revenue. The debate is complex, no doubt, but the underlying economic logic, especially in the face of mass automation, is compelling.
Beyond a basic income, other policy prescriptions emerge from the sources. There's a huge pent-up need for public infrastructure investment: roads, bridges, schools, airports. The federal government can borrow at near zero rates right now, while construction unemployment is high. Our sources argue it would be almost economic malpractice not to take advantage of this, both to create jobs now and upgrade vital infrastructure for the future.
Makes sense. And community colleges are also seen as vital for retraining, especially in high-demand fields like nursing, where educational bottlenecks currently exist. Making opportunities for retraining widely available seems critical in an increasingly dynamic job market, letting workers adapt.
And thinking structurally, if our economy is likely to become less labor-intensive overall, then it logically follows that maybe we ought to shift taxation from labor to capital. Current payroll taxes heavily burden labor-intensive industries, letting capital-intensive businesses kind of free ride on social programs.
So the economy as a whole should support social programs, not just workers through payroll taxes.
That's the argument.
Which also brings us to a crucial point raised, given all the trends we've reviewed. It's evident that now is absolutely not the time to be dismantling the social safety net we currently have, cutting programs for the most vulnerable in our society, given these pressures. It seems incredibly ill-advised based on this analysis.
We also maybe need to reassess the economic incentives. The fear that high marginal tax rates on top incomes will destroy entrepreneurship. It seems unsupportable when you look at history. Apple and Microsoft, for example, were founded in the mid-1970s when the top U.S. tax bracket was 70%.
70%.
Yeah. The fear of too many people riding in the economic wagon, as the saying goes, might need reassessment as machines prove increasingly capable of actually pulling it. Well, this deep dive has revealed just how profoundly accelerating information technology is reshaping our world, not just in theory, but in really tangible ways. From what you buy, to who serves your food, how your essays might be graded, even how your doctor might diagnose you.
And when we look at the broader context, yeah, the trends of technological unemployment, rising inequality, even climate change, they could combine into a kind of perfect storm. But technology can also be part of the solution if we consciously choose to leverage it for broad-based prosperity, not just concentrated wealth.
The challenge seems clear. How do we navigate these powerful, entangled forces and craft a future that actually offers security and prosperity for everyone, not just a select few?
Which really leads us to wonder, and something for you to think about. How might our fundamental assumptions about the role of work itself and about our economic rules need to change? How do we ensure advancing technology benefits all of humanity rather than just a tiny elite? Something to mull over as you think about the future.